Happy Saturday and welcome to the Nottingham Poetry Festival's Fringe events. We've got a really exciting lineup for you this afternoon, and the first person we're going to have up for you is Aaron G2. Then we're going to have Martin Gray, Finley Sean Thorpe, and then we've got a City Arts collaborative poem that was facilitated by Panya Banjoko. So we just want to give a massive thank you to all of our sponsors and to Arts Council England. And we hope you enjoy this first half. See you in a bit.
Hello, I'm Maroon G2. I'm a poet and educator from Enfield, North London. In this reading, I'll present 4 poems. 2 of the poems feature in my debut pamphlet, I Want to Be the One You Think About at Night, which is out now from Waterloo Press and deals with contemporary love poetry in the digital age. The 2 other poems I wrote in 2015 and 2017, which are now published in online and print magazines across the world. To begin the reading, I will return to my debut pamphlet and read to you Summer. August arrives in 49 minutes. Loaded with 31 days of pretty. 8mm film memory captured by 2020 eyes. The minty smell of cut grass. Dipping toes in emerald lakes. French kissing tongue-tied next to Nando's dumpsters. In alleyways not on Google Maps. Places no one else knows but us. But can us ever be? Just you and me. Squeezing adult hips into toddler swings. Scalding our thighs going down hot metal slides, climbing frames to see the world high. Water fights down residential roads, melted Maltesers in our pockets. Basketball rematches on scorching courts, playing video games until dawn. Enjoying a 99 flake with strawberry sauce, chocolate sauce, sprinkles or flakes. Because us kids deserve a treat. Before September starts singing and you kick down the front door and tell me you just want to be friends and don't want to make what we have complicated. It is 49 minutes to August 2019 with its 31 days of misery, and summer doesn't taste nice anymore. This next poem is called Birdman, and I wrote this in 2015. Birdman had matted feathers, a discoloured party hat for a beak and a drooping eyelid. Birdman had a jutted jaw, an ivory tongue and shards of glass teeth. He slept Fosters, rinsed a pack of Richmond Super Kings. Birdman had a gold court ring, lost his last 2 fingers, looked like a velociraptor. Birdman lived naked and pissed on passers-by from his window. Birdman would shout and throw his shit at them. You fucking immigrants are brown bread, walking like you own this neighbourhood. Where you ain't? I've been here for donkeys. Fuck the lot of ya. Birdman hated ginger beers and liked to have a J. Arthur rank over pretty girls he saw. Birdman had someone before, but he never told me. Birdman was in love with a blonde, but he never told me. Birdman had a black Burberry cape. Birdman had a Birdman, but he never told me. Something made Birdman like this, but he never told me. Birdman took me to the library, but he couldn't read. He could not pronounce long words. He growled at children and peed himself. He liked Broomfield Park Bench because he could sing with the robins. Birds understood him more than people. This is before he lost his mind. Birdman showed me my reflection in broken glass, said, if you have to be on somebody's side, be on his side. Always be on his side. I don't know what he meant. Birdman told me lie to get out of situations. Birdman was angry he couldn't fly. He broke his arm, recovered with the help of pigeons. Birdman screamed at night, thumbed his mouth, refused to take a bath, wanted to sleep with me. Birdman gave me a picture when he was younger. By the beach, he was handsome. Thick brown hair, skinny short body, teeth brighter than a star. It was unnatural for him to look normal. Aunt Carol said this needed to stop in a car outside Harlem High. If he were here, he'd be gnawing on a chicken drumstick, the irony, or munching on duck breast. And I'd tell him he's eating birds and he'd scream, twat bollocks, and vomit it out. Birdman had a pet turkey named Esteban. Following this poem is The Moorwood Green, which I wrote in 2017. A July Saturday in 2001. Slam shut the door of Mum's Cardinal Ford KA. The door hinge squeaks, emerging from the damp car park, running into the shoddy elevator that smells of earwax and poppadoms. The metal doors open on a Goliath of colourful shops. N22, Select, Giorgio, Awesome Chips, Cook's Meat Inn, Mr. Pretzel, Shakeaway, and Toy City are now ghost shops. Spectres of the past hover around in grey, empty spaces, which from a distance looks like a Peter Doig painting. A closed-down Cineworld with graffiti on it. R.I.P. Cineworld 2002 to 2014. Woolworths tills dinging and clashing. HMV restocking their items. Pearson's empty as usual until Mum buys another dinner set. Queues as long as a Python reticulatus in Cineworld. Soothing sweet mendazi and roasting breadfruit, profanities full of ras or salsets, rolling off salmon tongues, West Indian dialects and their malproposals. Dem yeah piggy dem a drive me mad, she says to her kids hanging off her legs. Now it's forgive my late arrival, Cassandra, and haughty laughter. A putrid smell of processed food from Pret or Costa clogs my nostrils. European delicacies for the middle class, nothing fresh. Woolworths is silent. HMV, a trashy Ella closed shop for lazy consumerists. Pearson's downgraded to a Primark and Mum shops there even more now. Silence along the corners of the mall. I passed the ground floor space on the way to meet the face painter and burst through the doors of Toy City, waving at the smiling grey-haired man, grabbing the newest Marvel superhero action figure, knowing Mum will buy it for me. I passed the ground floor space, which is now a New Look and Primark. I stand outside Toy City with its lights off, knowing the smiling grey-haired man died a long time ago, like Wood Green Shopping Mall. Now I'll return to my debut pamphlet and read to you one last poem called My Jumper. My jumper was first worn by Josh, but he stained it with sour cream. He threw the bowl onto his stomach during a jump scare scene from The Conjuring. Safia saw the sour cream stains on my jumper, but thought they were something else and gave it back to me. Lindsay wore my jumper in the rain and left it in her dirty laundry basket for 3 weeks. George put the jumper in the washing machine, which ran out its colour. Hector was the 4th person to wear my jumper, but he had weak capillaries and suffered from ongoing nosebleeds, and without any tissue, he thought he'd use a sleeve. Megan wore my jumper every day, refused to take it off, bathed in it, perspired in it, and did everything in it. When I dumped her on text, she shoved my jumper through the letterbox. Henry refused to wear my jumper as a jumper and instead wore it around his waist, like he was a somebody in the early noughties, but he admitted that one time he sharted and a little liquid blotch remains on the jumper. Melissa was posh, so she wore the jumper loosely around her neck, but it fell off her on the tube escalator and got stuck in the gap. She ripped off the left sleeve and refused to wear it anymore. Steve thought ripped sleeves looked cool when we went to a party. He lit up his cigarette and the ash went on the right sleeve. He later realized that it was burning. Now my jumper is sleeveless. Maureen was the fashion designer and turned my jumper into a crop top. Ali was 6'6" and my jumper sat below his pudgy belly button. Laura was 5'1" in heels, so she wore my jumper as a dress. Adam thought my jumper would look good as a bandana. He cut it into one and chucked the remnants away. Violet thought my jumper would make a cool bracelet and chucked the remnants away. My jumper has been on more people than I can count on my fingers, but I give my jumper to you, the last owner. Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the readings. If you would like to purchase a copy of my pamphlet, or keep up with my poetic adventures, you can do so through following me on social media at G2 Poetry on Twitter and Instagram.
Good evening, poetry fans. Welcome to Poetry News. My name is Martin Yerg, and on today's episode, we catch up with Nottingham-based poet Martin Gray. Martin, how are you? I'm good, thanks, Martin. How are you? I'm very well, thanks, Martin. Would you like to start by telling people what you did? Yeah, so I asked my Facebook and Instagram followers that if they could request any poem of mine, what poem would that be? And thankfully enough people replied, so I didn't look like a mug when trying to make this video. So I'm going to be giving those poems that people asked for and also giving the goss about some of the history behind the poems and a bit more about myself. Matt or Luke? Are all your jokes that culturally dated? Probably yes. So what do you have for us first? I'm going to start with the first poem from the collection as requested by Esther. Thank you, Esther. This is called Bones. Let's take it away. The remnants of her yellowed hair were too weak to hide her sinkhole cheeks from the breeze of our approaching night bus. Her 20 going on cold turkey bones, rising and falling with a moving mouth silenced by the idling of the engine. Her worn-to-often yellow tracksuit is almost two-dimensional on her stick limbs, and twig fingers fumble change against the hissing open door, the suburban 1 a.m. sky. Eyes falling pair by pair as they see her through the window, into phones with and without battery, writing real and fake messages. Don't talk to me. Possessions repositioned for maximum don't sit here. Please. A jagged urgency bouncing off the stop bells, ding at our shrinking comfort zones, hitting our bones in waves as she stumbles at the empty priority seating right in front of me. A moving mouth silenced by the idling of our conscience. Does anyone have change for the bus? I really need to get home. Held in a hush by her helplessness and the fear on her breath, our hearts in sync with the engine vibration, my hands not prepared for this situation. Please! Someone finally fumbles, and I do too. Finding a pound and a penny, telling her sorry, it's all I have on me. Not sorry for the bones and the pity blue veins overpowering her punctured skin, although it took two pleas for someone to break from a phone with or without battery, writing real and fake messages of don't talk to me. A moving mouth silenced by the scorn of the delayed as she rests her stretched and sagging forearms on the back of the seat in front of me. And the potholes swing us in unison. I see the bruising and our malnutrition, ding in every pitfall of our spineless bellies on our bared yellow teeth. But my shrunken comfort zone doesn't think to ask her if she'll be okay. I need to pay you back. I need to. Ding, she fires at me suddenly, my attempts at kindness bouncing off the half-unzipped caves where her neck should be, and every time I tell her she doesn't, she fumbles a crumpled 10 or 20 from her pocket at the now hissing open door our other benefactor quietly departs from. Almost one for all the spinal bones pushing through her top, ding as she saves them from the half-crushed cans on the floor. Eyes in phones with and without battery, see her shove them all right at me, see me close my hands and cover my pockets as if they've seen this exact scene time and time and time again. I want to stop her, to calm her motion blur, but I cannot move anything in case I accidentally hit her. Ding, please! I say, keep your money. I want you to get home safely. I want to get home safely, and that calms her just enough. Just slightly. But my shrunken comfort zone still doesn't think to ask her if she'll be okay. Or if she can eat those bones away, or if home is even a safe place to stay. Because they don't know what I would do if she told me. Ding, me this time. Telling myself that she'll be fine because my shrunken comfort zone wants this to stop when the bus does. Ding, as she pulls her bones up by the stop bell. Ding, as if she's getting off too. Ding, and I don't know how to be alone with her in the streetlit stillness we've been cutting through. Ding, please, she says. Ding, can I have a hug? I see the worst of myself when I assume the worst in her. But I try to wrap my shrunken comfort zone around her bones tightly enough to mean something, and gently enough to protect her from her pain and protect her for a moment from the cracks we let her fall through. But my shrunken comfort zone still doesn't think to ask her if she'll be okay, as I tell her again to get home safely and head alone to the dark breeze outside the hissing open door. My hair too meek to hide my hapless cheeks from the breeze of her departing night bus. Her 20 going on frailty bones, falling and falling with a moving mouth silenced by downward pairs of eyes. In phones with and without battery, writing real and fake messages. Don't talk to me. Thank you, Martin. Can you tell our viewers a little more about that poem? Specifically, what inspired it and how did you go about writing a poem of that nature? Yeah, of course. I was up at the Edinburgh Festival 2018 and I was just on, been to some events on the night bus going back, and really the story played out basically as I tell it in the poem. And, it was a really obviously difficult moment. I think what made it the most difficult was how sort of not unprepared in the sense of unwilling, but how unprepared me and everyone else on the bus was to essentially have a situation like that happen. And what I wanted to highlight more than anything in that poem is the amount of inequality, the amount of injustice, the amount of help that people need that they're not getting, and it can be very difficult to write a poem like that whilst telling the point but also not objectifying the people involved in it. And I performed it a number of times. I've done various versions to get it to that point, and hopefully I've got the balance right, and I hope that they're okay. So your style could be described as indirectly political. Now, I've never heard that said before, but I guess you could. I'd say if you read the book, it's obvious what my political views are, and much like a lot of poets, I want to do my bit to try and fix all the injustices that are going on in the world. But some poets are amazingly good at writing these kind of super direct poems that just kind of smash through a problem. And I've never really been able to write poems in that way, but I like to think that I do those poems in my own way, and I still give those same positive messages, but just in my own way. Nottingham City of Literature described your book as spiting the labels set to divide us, imploring us, the reader, to stop patrolling our differences like boundaries on a map, encouraging us to seek out our shared collective heart. How do you feel about that? Oh yeah, that made me super happy. That made me so happy to hear that. Which poem do you have for us next, Martin? Yeah, next up is the poem I'm arguably best known for, or at least least unknown for. It's called Fish, Chips, Bread and Butter and a Cigarette, and it was the most requested actually in my call out. When I say most requested, I mean twice. Like I say, not that many people got back to me. But yeah, so thank you, Isabel, and thank you to my mum. This is Fish, Chips, Bread and Butter and a Cigarette. Try again, mate. The bus went twice a week back then. A return ticket to Hollywood from a stop by the village well, long since succumbed to a housing development that seemed so modern at the time. Chippy often got him telling me stories from his youth, bold and retold memories deep fried in my hungry naivety. Him and his friends, they'd wait for ages sometimes. They had to get to the bus stop early, stare down the road in the hope it hadn't passed already, and if they were lucky, they'd catch the coal merchant's bored horse skulking off alone again. Or the rag and bone men looking for a bargain. A far cry from the far-flung cinematic worlds of sharp suits and femme fatales awaiting them after the town centre chippy. A fortnightly tale of its little speciality of fish. chips, bread and butter, and a cigarette. In my still warm fish, I'd taste his story, as if the crunch of teeth on batter could take him back to the bus with me, where the bright-eyed stars of an old man's tale made him 15 again, as it all unveiled. Him, his friends, and I, we'd munch away on sustenance served in yesterday's smudged out headlines. He'd be as black and white and mid-Atlantic spoken as the movies he saw in between the removable letters above the foyer door, and the black dots flash in every 15 minutes to change the reel once more. I'd ask him all the questions I never thought to ask him at the time, with both our lives ahead of us, instead of only mine over fish, chips, bread and butter, and a cigarette. His factory working, water fetching, vegetable picking ways, Sundays to Fridays, alternate Saturdays left him just enough for the bus, food and matinee. But still less than the pocket money, not paying for my still warm fish, served in paper so plain it became the canvas for stories lost between then and those days. My still warm chips, the B feature to a bit of time with the him I never knew. Because even with the world at our fingertips, we can't access a place where no history exists, and without those stories I would never understand the younger days of the elderly man who bought me still warm fish and chips all those years ago. When he ate before movies with pre-war naivety, unaware that smoking causes cancer or that some would soon be conscripted forever from fish, chips, bread and butter, and a cigarette. Who is the old man in the poem? The elderly man in that poem is my granddad. So, granddad on one side died when I was very young, never really got a chance to get to know him. Granddad on the other side, was around till I was nearly 30. He was a right raconteur. He had a story for everything under the sun. I just wanted to tell some of his stories kind of through my own storytelling, and that's not the only food-based grandparent poem in your collection, is it? Yeah, that's right. There's another one in there about my grandma. Again, it's not like food-based, about grandparent. And I've never performed this one live anywhere before until now. So thank you, Isabel, for the request. This is Tea and Biscuits. Take it away. When I couldn't make it better, she'd make a cup of tea. A floral pot of remedy for me against the world, with a custard cream to calm my hunger resting on a matching saucer, and maybe one for luck. But no dunking. Tea and biscuits became compulsory as her independence poured from the spout of her fragility. But when no amount of corner shop runs or carrying the tray could counteract the cancer and the cataracts, she'd make a cup of tea, a floral pot of remedy to remember her by. I'll always put the kettle on when you can't make it better. Thanks, Martin. Have you got any custard creams going spare? I'm right famished. Sorry, I don't. I ate them all last night. Out of association? Yeah, of course. I think it's amazing some of the associations that we don't realise we have, and they come in all these different forms. Now, like I was saying before, it might be a chip shop or a biscuit or a place or whatever it happens to be. And I think, I was never particularly aware of them in the past, but certainly in the last few years I've kind of become very aware of a lot of these associations, and I think they're also just really important because they connect us with places. You could be in the most beautiful place in the world, but it's never going to have that same emotional effect on you, or at least not me, as like a much more average place where you've got loads of memories about that time you did that, or that time you were with that person, or something like that. Maybe I'm just getting horribly nostalgic in my middle age. I don't know, but that's just how I think about it. Oh, definitely. Which leads me neatly onto my request, which is a poem I saw you do at an open mic in February. Ah, the before times. I know them well. Me too, yeah. Please can you do for us Just a Dream on Our Minds? Take it away. Once upon a recording booth, built from bits of the Mojo Triangle, Big Bill Broonsy dreamt he was in the White House, sitting in the president's chair. Delta blues bursting from his beaten up Hawaiian guitar into a mono mic position for the perfect sound in what's left of the groove my needle finds in between the pops and the warping. I'm dreaming of Big Bill's Bourbon Street. His New Orleans pentatonics no longer distorted by background hiss and range-reducing remasters as they pass me at the door of a bar on the back of cigar smoke and spilled single malt. My spirit scratched by the foggy air as between jobs Big Bill laments how that was just a dream I had on my mind. Starting a show to rousing applause and one day being paraphrased at a president's inauguration. Generations after, a doff of my trilby and a bottle of whiskey got him at my table long enough to shake his hand and strip away the myth from the mysterious lines he cut into the musky circle spinning in my living room. But it's just a dream. It's just a dream I have on my mind. Can you tell our viewers a little more about that poem? Well, I've always loved old soul music, old blues music, and it's mainly because when I was a kid, in the living room we had this dusty old vinyl player, and that stuff was kind of a soundtrack to a lot of my childhood. So I guess, going back to associations, I guess I've formed one with that. And that Big Bill Broonsy song especially has always been one of my favourites. But then when I looked him up for doing that poem, I found out, a bunch of stuff I didn't know about him. He was a pioneer of electric blues, did one of the first ever electric blues albums. But he was also a civil rights pioneer as early as the 1940s. And he's one of those, there are so many people who've played an important role in social progress, and obviously we learn about a lot of them, but a lot of them we don't. And, Big Bill Broonsy is definitely one of those. So, he's a much more fascinating character than I realised when I first started writing that poem. Have you ever been to New Orleans? No, I haven't, but I would love to. I would really, really love to. But you do go to Berlin a lot. Oh, I properly love that place. And it's the setting for the next poem, actually, which is also back to the book. I hear that socialbookshelves.com described it as probably their favourite poetry collection of the year. They did, which blew my mind, to be honest. To get a review like that with my little book that I've put so much work into was just amazing. It made my day, week and month. But yeah, the next poem is called It Rained a Lot in Berlin That Day, and there's a story behind this one as well, like there are with most of my poems. So I was out in Berlin at a time when they had one of the biggest rainstorms they'd had for decades. It kind of wiped the city out for the most part for the evening. It was in some ways quite sort of interesting to be around during that. But me and a friend, we'd been staying at a friend's apartment while they were away at a business trip. And then they were coming back that day and we were just moving into an Airbnb for the last few days of the trip. And the friend said to us before they left us in their apartment, don't mind how you leave it. And just pointed to this pink cake and said, I just don't want that cake to be here when I get back. So, being like, hopefully nice people, we cleaned up, we tidied up, we left everything nice. We went across Berlin in the rainstorm to this new to this new accommodation, and then me and my mate looked at each other and it was like, you did get rid of the cake, didn't you? And he looked at me and went, no, I thought you did. So we then had to go back across Berlin to my friend's apartment to move this cake like a metre from the worktop to the bin and then go all the way back again. So we had essentially 3 trips across Berlin in one of the biggest rainstorms they've had in decades. But if we hadn't have done it, our friend would have come back, pretty much walked in, and the first thing they would have seen was this cake sat there as some kind of 2-fingered salute. And I'm sure they would have just laughed it off. But even so, all of that travelling in the rainstorm inspired this poem. And this was requested by my mum, again, because she likes to be helpful and requested too. So thank you for that. This is It Rained a Lot in Berlin That Day. Well, then let's hear it. Whoa, try again. Let's try that again, Martin. It rained a lot in Berlin that day. With the never-ending burble of a kettle a minute from boiling, your delayed arrival stranding you 8 stops from home in the U9 flood near Tiergarten. It rained a lot in Berlin that day. A 1 in 60 years soaking, keeping the beer drinkers from benches by the Spätis. No street musicians to serenade the sodden Schönerhauser swarms, leaving fewer empty bottles by the bins. It rained a lot in Berlin that day. Countless droplets bounced off the tags and the ample mansion leading to the side streets where they rarely seemed to cut the foot-high grass. While we shared a little laugh or two about the surfboard and the Airbnb you said we wouldn't need again. It rained a lot in Berlin that day. A rain of puddles and plans with holes in, making it slippy in Einstein Cafe. A vodka bottle with a glass or two waiting on your kitchen table. A little thank you for letting us crash there while you'd been away. It rained a lot in Berlin that day, where for once the Ubers were fuller than the U-Bahns, but we were more intent on you getting safely home than working out another day to cook for you like we promised you before sharing a Berliner or two on your balcony. It rained a lot in Berlin that day, but we were drenched in afterglow from the Willkommen you show us every single time we go. Thank you, Martin. Before we go to our penultimate piece, do you have any advice for poets looking to publish their first collection? Yes, I do. And I'm always happy to give advice on this, because I really struggled with it. So firstly, I would say, pick your moment. There's no requirement to publish anything. There's no time limit to publish anything. Some people publish within a year. For me, it took about 7. Some people self-publish, some people go through a publisher. Like I say, some people don't want to publish at all. Whatever you want to do on that is fine. Secondly, I would say, you need to know what it is that you're looking to publish in order that you can find the right publisher. It's a bit like, the best way I've heard it described is it's a bit like record labels. You're not going to take your indie music to a dance music label generally because they're just not going to be interested. It's the same with poetry publishers. Me and Fly on the Wall, I feel that our work kind of fits like a glove, and I would hope that Fly on the Wall think the same because, they're fantastic press. And I'd recommend anyone with a socially conscious book to try and go publish through them. But if you go to the wrong publisher, you're really just wasting your time. So research the publisher, get to know what they're about, see if they're suitable for you. Third bit of advice I would say is grow yourself a thick skin, because if you're anything like me, I get very precious about my poems. I get very... I write them and I think they're fine, and then, they've been improved so much by taking criticism, and it's really essential that you can take that criticism. And, you know, that's what a good publisher will do. A good publisher will just arrow in with loads of constructive criticism. And generally, looking back on my manuscript edits, for the most part, they were right. You know, because they came to the poem with fresh eyes and knowledge of the market and publishing and fresh perspective on what it was that I was trying to say. And, you know, beware of a publisher that doesn't constructively take your work apart. And then finally, I would say just enjoy it. You know, I've got a book. It's amazing, you know, and yeah, some people will think it's rubbish, I'm sure, but some people hopefully will like it, and that's the most important thing. Which leads you on to your penultimate poem, The Rain Outside My Window, which was requested by your dad, I believe. And just to say, this poem does contain some quite violent imagery, so if you're sensitive to that, you might want to close your ears. I hear you, hammering my window as hard as you can. Your intoxicating, saccharine cry trying to seduce me, trying to drown me. I do not fear you. When I'm in here and you're out there, I'm definitely dry when I listen to you bounce off the boundary between us, desperately calling me, darkening your sky. I will never ignore you or forgive you for the bludgeoned eyes and blackened ribs you'd inflict on me so easily, for tearing me from my hiding places through the shards of glass you made me swallow from every shattered window, from the cost of the quadruple glazing you tap on. See, I make it clear for you, but you never listen, not to me, not to anybody. I see through every single drop, and you will never seduce me again. Not now I'm the one who has control of the rain outside my window, of the pain outside my soul. Can you tell us what inspired that poem? Yeah, of course. That poem was really inspired by my anxiety. You know, I have it under control now, and really that poem is a victory poem over the fact that I've got this thing I have in check most of the time. But certainly in the past it often didn't used to be like that, and anyone with anxiety will know that sometimes easy things can be really, really difficult if it's on top of you. And, you know, to work to overcome something like that and to achieve that is a really positive and really powerful thing to do. But, you know, I coach my mind sort of multiple times a day. You know, I will egg myself on to get things done. I'll push myself through. I'll tell myself I can do it. But what I also do is I keep a positivity diary. And each day I like to make a little note of the little things I've done. It might be like, oh, I cooked a tasty meal, or I had a nice chat with a friend, or whatever it happened to be. And then whenever you need that boost, that sort of self-validation, you can look back at that diary and just think to yourself, oh yeah, I've been doing all this cool stuff, you know, I'm all right, it's all right. You know, it's really important, and especially at the moment, to just be kind with ourselves and kind to ourselves. And finally, is there anything else you'd like to tell the viewers? Assuming that people are still watching, which, you know, hope you are. But yeah, I have two things just to finish up on. Firstly, sorry, Andrea, you requested Beowulf. That's not one of mine, but you made me chuckle, so add that to your positivity diary. And secondly, you know, I think, you know, the world's in a very difficult place at the moment, which is a very cliched thing to say, you know, and saying that in itself doesn't solve anything. But, you know, we've got so many people at each other's throats, so many things just divided, so many isms and phobias and just bits of nonsense that just seem to be getting more and more prevalent in the world. And what we really need, I think, is kindness. And, you know, kindness isn't going to fix all of the world's problems. You know, kindness doesn't have any medical qualifications, for example, and things like that. But generally, what I think, whatever the situation might be, that situation would be better if people were kinder to each other. You know, there wouldn't be as many wars if there was kindness. There wouldn't be as much hate if there was kindness. And even if it's not reciprocated, it's good to be the one giving it. So, you know, it's like Bill and Ted said, be excellent to each other. And this is really what inspired the final poem that I'm going to do today, because, you know, I feel that the best sort of revolution is a revolution that we have through these micro acts of kindness. And I try to do them when I can. I don't always succeed. Sometimes I mess up. Sometimes I get things wrong. Sometimes I wimp out of things. But I try. And I think if other people can try as well, you know, if everybody did that, we wouldn't fix the problems, but things would be a nicer place. This final poem is about exactly that. So thank you, Anna, for the request. This is called We Could Start a Revolution. Take it away. We could start a revolution, you and I. We could harness the hope we think will pass on by in every broken promise, via every streetlit side effect of late evenings in our endless daily grind. There's no amount of serotonin can fully hide the unquantifiable fear behind our eyes, the rawness in our rejections, the frustrations in our failures, the melancholy in the missed opportunity we never quite forget, the regret in what we allowed to drag us down. Or when our friends filled our conversations with fables from every corner of the earth, while you and I flailed with a dearth of worth as if it was water in a broken glass. But we could start a revolution, you and I. We could make love to our front lines, turn them into a brightened sky, serenade our sorrow, borrow the best from each other's corneas. Know that nothing had been nonsensical as we filled each other's trenches, and that every piece of inner peace would be pure when we flushed away our finality. Then we could start a revolution, you and I. We could teach each other how to fly, to soar above our search for perfection. Our once warmed by the photosynthesis in our fingertips as they clutch our formerly unclutchable sky. Our needs nurtured by value no amount of money could ever provide, and we could learn to share our revolution, so that no one we care for would ever be hungry or would ever be cold. And that maybe something we'd say or do would make them want to start a revolution too, because someone, somewhere, made me want to start a revolution with you, and we could bask inside our revolution, always as young as the potential we saw in each other's imperfections that first time we met. We could start a revolution, you and I. We could inspire everyone with the warmth inside our eyes until every single child is born with a chance and every single soldier wants to lay down their arms. If everyone wanted peace, there'd be peace. If everyone wanted to be more, we'd be more. If you wanted to start that revolution too, we'd recycle hate into cushions for our falls with decent human rights for all. We'd show all the bigots love is not about nation. With an end to social deprivation, we find cures for every fatal disease by curing everyone who's bringing our world to its knees, even if we only see the beginning. You might think it's impossible, that I'm deluding myself dumb. But all we'd have to do is be the people we'd become. Because we could do anything if we gave it a try. We could start a revolution. You and I. Thank you very much, Martin. If you would like to get a hold of Martin's book, then it is available here. And if you'd like to get in touch with Martin, then you can get in touch with him here. Just leaves it for me to say, from all of us at Poetry News, thank you for watching. We hope you stay safe and well, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. I've been Martin Jörg. This has been Poetry News. Until the next rhyme.
In the briefest of brief moments, where we drag ourselves away from whatever it is we are trying to be, from bearing witness to this mass shared hallucination we call reality, it seems that we court madness from the things that we might see, the truth that we can't face, that addiction drives the human race, fueling the engine of endeavour, nesting next to our desires, gasoline poured on thirsty fires, blooming shadows that are long cast and sure to fast become our master, linger and endure the undeniable allure of the heat of our need for more. A need that lives inside us all, for more power, more wealth, more control. Like a forever starving dog eating from a never-ending bowl, we shall never be full, nor satisfied, but instead let that need wrapped in greed be our guide, with a billion other distractions to be tasted alongside, one for each shining star in the sky, endless follies to be consumed by the naked, dancing flames of our want. And as we consume them, they consume us. Yet from the pauper to the king, we keep acting nonchalant as we burn in a crucible of carrots used to dull life's pointy stick. Marking time that passes by, each second's Richter tick, it seems we have convinced ourselves that make-believing is the trick, that our predilection to addiction won't be the last bucket that we kick. In Rome, the relics rule. Ancient ruins rest, viewed with eager eyes, venerated by all who visit the eternal city, eager for a taste of the past, and perhaps a taste of pasta. The Colosseum stands magnificent, casting its shadow for millennia. Tourists stroll through the Roman Forum, agog at the splendour of the remnants of a grandiose age, the rubble of the past somehow inspiring wonder. And I ponder, will the civilization that builds its cities on the broken vestiges of our own be so enamoured with what's left of the world we once called home? Will they marvel at the half-standing girders of Tesco superstores? Will they pay to have their picture taken in front of Costa coffee doors? Will they try to fathom our worship of such deities as the wise old colonel or the burger peddling clown? Will they let the plethora of Primarks sit protected for posterity at the centre of their new metropole? Or will they simply pull them down, Perhaps future historians, keen to reveal the secrets of the past, shall catalogue the mountains of plastic Christmas cracker toys from the rubbish tips they were cast. Their understanding of a world lost to time will be pieced together from the reflections in the eyes that shine of 1 billion self-portraits taken by their forebearers as their civilization slid into decline. We are all disaster tourists, bearing witness to history's slowest unfolding catastrophe, the glacial collapse of the empire of humanity. The last desperate dying throes of an unwieldy tortured beast, screaming bloody murder until its being is finally ceased. Captured, analysed and archived by the ever-present rolling news, designed to keep you entertained by giving you the blues. And as infrastructures crumble and environments collapse, don't forget to go to work and make sure you pay tax. As the spectacle continues, our half-truths become plain lies. Society in perpetuity, the architect of its own demise, sliding into nothing with a side order of fries. So why not have your heart's desire? Get it delivered to your door. Fly across the sky to a place you can't afford. Gamble with your health. Gamble with your money. Sit knee-deep in the corruption of the land of milk and honey. Live an unfulfilling life full of things. Wait with a sense of dread to see what tomorrow brings. Be disappointed. Be disappointing. Trap yourself in a loop of unhappiness. Complain, remain the same. Drink victory gin. Smoke cigarettes prophesizing your death with helpful pictures on the packet. Decide what you need, then discover that you lack it. Lose yourself in binges to distract you from your woes. Just see how it goes. Stop to smell the roses. Get hay fever. Squander your youth. Waste your wisdom. Buy into the lies you were told. Sell out. Give up. Drink deep from an empty cup. Worry, worry, worry. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Slip out of fashionable demographics. Be forgotten. Forget. Realize the things you do or don't do both lead to regret. And then, be free. Be all that you can be. Realize that in a world that is this wrong, you were just taking in the sights as a disaster tourist all along. Then do something unburdened by fear. And finally, stop wishing you weren't here. They didn't take long, did they? The marketeers, to jump on freshly bloomed anxieties, newly nurtured fears, hawking their wares, your favourite label or designer, flogging you with slick delivery, bespoke artisanal hand sanitizer. The banks, building societies, credit lenders have become our staunch defenders, with comforting messages that we're all in this together, and how to spend our cash so this storm we can weather. With homespun poems filmed guerrilla style by clients, exalting the protection of corporate giants from the comfort of their lockdown lounges, kitchens and living rooms, grateful for the beneficence of their 24% APR on a credit card they use to put fuel in their now stationary car and pay for holidays too risky to take. Yes, they're not vague that the plague means there's money to make. Now between the adverts touting funeral insurance, life insurance, home insurance comes reassurance. Commercials commending all we have endured, our struggles and accommodations through these virus-tinged times, trials and tribulations. All we have suffered, all we are grieving, finally given some context and meaning by a quorum of people whose job is planting the seed of the idea to buy lots of things we don't need. So the thing that endures the most is just greed. But it's okay, because we are all in this together, facing impossible odds, face masked and uncertain, but reassured that the banks, the corporations, the online purveyors, our saviours, our champions, our wisest soothsayers, the buyers and sellers and makers of tat are behind us, beside us, and have all got our back. So we can get back to buying, back to work, back to the pub and the club, the gyms and cafes, the concerts, the movies, and at a stretch, perhaps, the postmodern plays. The advertisers are allies through this invisible war, protecting, defending, so we all can buy more. And never forget, just how much they care that their customer base stays safe and alive and product aware. So praise be for the adverts that show in detail how close to oblivion that we all did sail, that highlight the strains and the stresses of just being alive so they can flog us fabric conditioner, furniture, and a face mask or 5. Hallelujah to those companies brave enough to point out exactly what life in the world's now about. Sell us the answers, sell us the dream, sell us our worries in a way we can meme, sell us the breath in our chests, sell us a quick fix, sell us normal or packaged in a Tetra Pak 6, government stamped, trading standards approved, the heartfelt, well-meaning, and ever so sincere sentiments and words of the viral marketeer.
Hello, my name's Henry Normal, and I have the honour of being the patron of Nottingham City Arts, who have recently organised a collective and collaborative poem by the people of Nottingham, and it's to reflect our lives during lockdown. And the poem has been collected and collated and edited and constructed by Panya Banyoko, and I'd like to thank Panya for her great work, and I'd also like to thank all those people that contributed. The poem is called Pause, and I hope you like it.
When the world paused to greedily breathe in hope,
I catch myself standing by the window,
leaning into solitude.
We are wet clay among chaos.
Behind a locked door, my life is a stretch to breathe, reflect and hope.
While May winds storm the hawthorn hedges,
the pendulum swings, rising and falling.
And we are so small from this forced stillness.
Thoughts travelling tirelessly,
turning to face a cloudless sky.
Standing still in time, mindful, loving and true.
Fixed in a window pane, hearing nature's sigh.
We face it all, the sick, the lonely.
Debt, fear, apathy, the call of funeral crows.
Broken and fallen apart.
The cracks start to appear.
Things aren't always as they seem, if only we hear.
Birds, bluebells, the beat of your heart.
Examine them closely. I do not crave an ending at a time like this.
Beyond the lapse of the lawn, beyond your own barriers to feel vexed.
Rushing everywhere, halfway home.
I breathe deeply, my madness hard.
Remember those who are no longer with the present.
Stilled by the unthinkable.
Has life been kind beneath azure skies?
Starlings take flight, bathed in summer sun.
Linger a while, hold that note.
So we can see our truth and watch the lilacs bloom.
When I let go, look up and around.
Finally grasp this fragile planet through innocence renewed.
Pause to smell hyacinths.
To stop and breathe.
Drift away from all hurt.
I can see a new paradigm.
Winged, free, youthful, quiet moments aplenty.
Bird song divine. What will happen next?
It's quite true to say we make history.
breathing in and out the possibilities of tomorrow hanging in the air.
Don't mourn for me with an old blue hum.
Feel this city for a moment and capture every blue spring sky.
When time is served, life on hold, absorbing the wonder.
These moments may not happen again.
Faces on screens mapped in history.
Step backwards to calm. We are all in this together.
To recall and enjoy the white-tailed bumblebees.
For all these days and more, normal life is gone.
And yet we reign, mind at ease, still and grateful.
Thank you to all the poets that performed in our first half. Next up, we've got Panya Banjoko, Claire Finn, Joe Weston, Thomas Daniel Ince, and Laura Greville.
One of a kind.
They had kept him 7 long years, hidden behind a crumpled wall in a cavernous shelter set like a cage. And when the king ordered, they fed him mildew bread, made him drink the milk of rancid yaks, waited for his skin to turn pale and for his voice to leave him. Then, when he was eager for water to dislodge the sand in his throat, they promised him life for his stint. They told him, use your fingers like the limbs of a Darwin bark spider, make beauty like purple lilies and the call of the shuffle-winged bird. With tools laid out like surgeons' instruments, he performed his vision. Pounding like the call of a woodpecker, he softened and formed thick ingots of gold into sunbird tails. With hands bent and nails jagged, he planted gems in rows like marching ants, and with each new tide, he cut, pierced, and soldered. And when he had shaped his dreams into curves, when he could see the image of his face in the gleam of the dome, when he knew it could not be matched, he inscribed it with time-worn text, and it was done. The king called his people to behold the work of the master craftsman, and they revelled with delight at the skill in his bones. Then they cut off his hand. always difficult when people ask me to talk about myself or to kind of define myself perhaps with one thing, because I'm a number of different things. So I am a writer specializing in poetry and performance poetry as well, but also I'm an archivist, so I very much like looking at history and delving into the past and seeing how that can inform the future and also how it interacts with my writing as well. My journey to becoming a poet, it's been a bit of a rocky road because my career spans almost 30 years. And if I look back at what the landscape was like 30 years ago, the kind of support I see young writers getting today wasn't the support that I had. So I really had to kind of fight and claw my way into the poetry circle. And maybe that is a good thing because I didn't get this automatic adulation. It meant that I really had to work at my craft and I really had to love it to be able to stick with it even when things weren't going so well at the beginning. So in terms of writer development, there wasn't any of that for someone like me, and not just me actually, because I'm doing some research at the moment looking at the history of black writing in Nottingham during the 70s and the 80s, and the people I'm interviewing are also saying the same things, that 30 years ago there really wasn't that support, and people made a choice. They made choices of being creative or actually trying to change the system in some way. So people went into careers where they looked at writing policy to create equal opportunities. I guess in that sense, I was very fortunate that even though there wasn't the opportunity for somebody like me, I still stuck to my career as a writer and used that as a tool to try and make change.
How long will it take for them to relate what they on my head called natty locks, even dread? I know nothing for grow, except you must know. Now better put your hand in here, because of my covenant with Jah.
I hope that what my poetry gives to the reader is a sense of what life can be like for other people. So one of my poems is called Airport, and it takes the listener through the process of somebody just going to the airport to go and have a nice holiday, but actually being stopped and being searched and being treated as a criminal. And I like to do pieces like that because I want my audience to see how easy it is for people to judge the facade. And actually behind that, there's a person that's made up of lots of different things. So I'll preface that poem with the fact that I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a primary school teacher, I'm a writer, I'm an archivist, all these positive things. But actually when somebody just looks at me for face value, they see something completely different. So I'm hoping that my poetry gets people to think a little bit more before making judgments. That's really what I'm trying to achieve, just to get people to be a little bit more tolerant.
He gestures me to one side, makes me stand like Christ, arms outstretched. Little children stare at my shame. He pats my right leg from thigh to ankle, my left from ankle to thigh, each arm from the pit to the wrist rubbed down. He runs his thumbs around the waist of my jeans, under the rims of my breast, and down my spine. And then he feels, squeezes the 82 dreads curled to an eighth of their size in my knitted black hat. He squeezes in between the coils, squeezes like he's milking a cow. Nothing but Samson's strength rests here. After 2 phases of what floats by, I'm ushered into a small room, taken behind the scenes, to meet her, the supervisor. She puts people in their places. She asks who I am. I'm an artist. I write words and I turn them into poems and songs. I paint stories with proverbs and parables, and I sing speeches. I'm a dreamer. I dream because I'm dissatisfied, and because I'm dissatisfied, I dream. I've nothing more to declare.
I always think it's kind of strange that I am a writer, because I come from a family where writing wasn't a career that anyone had embarked upon. My family, in terms of literature, was really quite poor. So throughout my entire childhood, at home, I only ever had one book gifted to me, and it was a book of prayers. So my contact with books came through being at school. One of my clearest memories is being at primary school and a supply teacher coming and reading a story. She read this story about this magic chair that could fly, and it went on all these kinds of adventures. And I just thought, wow, the power of words. And I kind of fell in love with words. And although I say that in terms of written literature, my family background was devoid of that, what we did have in my family was a lot of oral storytelling. I really enjoyed listening to granduncles talk about their experiences back home in the Caribbean. And I guess that influence is still there within my poetry. They're kind of like little mini stories within themselves. Use your fingers like the limbs of a Darwin bark spider. Make beauty like purple lilies and the call of the shuffle-winged bird. With tools laid out like surgeons' instruments, he performed his vision. Pounding like the call of a woodpecker, he softened and formed thick ingots of gold into sunbird tails. With hands bent and nails jagged, he planted gems in rows like marching ants, and with each new tide, he cut, pierced, and soldered.
Pani Banjoka is a very important person to Nottingham, the poetry scene, and a person that people look up to from all sorts of communities now, not just the black community, which is the obvious one. Some things, it's a series of beautiful pieces actually, and one of the things I find interesting is the way that it is rooted in this country, in this city, but also very firmly in the Caribbean also. I mean, I've known her work for quite a long time now, and it's kind of interesting the journey it's taking, which is a lot of social commentary, quite allegorical, very sensitive. It has the mood and tone of a storyteller, which is what she is, but you always have a sense that she's gently teaching you something, not always gently, though sometimes it's very visceral and quite brutal, but it has a point. A lot of Pani's writing, like a lot of black British writers, reflects a difficult experience in this country, so it can feel quite oppositional. There's a lot of references to the relationship with authority, and there's brutality in here as well, like the line, so it's been a hard stop. A hard stop is when the police decide to stop a young man, usually without any warning. It's just stop, it's jump on, it's down on the ground, and it's drag. So there are things in that which is about the black British cultural experience here. And I think that sideways glance at reality, I think it's probably quite a lot to do with the sense of place and trying to work out what you are doing in a particular environment and whether you belong there or not, because that is a theme which is in this book quite a lot.
That acceptance of being British is something that is yet to happen. So I'm constantly asked, where are you from? I'm from Nottingham, you know, I'm from England, this is where I'm from. But no, where are you really from? From here. So it's that area of where do you belong? What is your identity? Social justice is a really strong theme throughout all of my work, and I guess that is because of my experience as second generation of Caribbean migrants in the city. Although I am the first generation to be born in this country, to go through the education system, and an education system that wasn't really set up for us or understood us, or in some instances didn't actually really want us to do very well. I went to Raleigh Infants, which no longer exists, then on to Windley Junior School, which no longer exists, and then the piece de resistance was Cottesmore, which no longer exists. And I think that says a lot about these schools. And Cottesmore, what the teachers said of us, black students, was that we would end up in prison. That was what was expected of us. It was a real brutal environment, actually, when I think about it, and not only from my own experience, but having the archive and having stories of what my generation faced within schools. It's absolutely horrendous. That, you know, there are experiences of children being made to stand outside in winter on the footpath without shoes on, as a form of punishment. And I witnessed teachers severely caning other students, 3 teachers caning one child. Now that's barbaric, that's absolutely outrageous. In terms of me, during my primary education, because my mother tongue is the Jamaican vernacular and being that first wave going through the education system, they didn't quite understand me. And so my 5-year-old self dealt with that situation by choosing to be an elective mute. So I went through a large part of my primary education not talking, absolutely afraid to speak, and being very shy and being very withdrawn. I used to get the cane for things that I hadn't done. I was given wrong career advice when I said I wanted to be a teacher. I was told that that wasn't possible because my dad, he was a miner, my mum, she was a domestic engineer or a cleaner, and so I was setting my sights far too high, and I was placed in a warehouse to break down boxes. And all the while the brain is churning and wanting to do more, but the system at that point wasn't enabling me to do more. Around the age of 13, 14, I started to read about the Black Panther movement. I started to read about African American activists, people like George Jackson. I read his prison letters. I started to read about the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey, Malcolm X, and that kind of literature had an impact on me. Here I was living in a society that was telling me everything bad about being black, and here I was reading literature that was saying actually be proud of who you are, and this is the whole system structured around inequality, and the way you can overcome this is through education and being positive and having a positive frame of mind. And so I started to then, as a teenager, progress into the Rastafarian movement, which was a movement that was set up really for black people in Jamaica at the time, because that's where it started, as a way of reclaiming our history and our culture that had been lost through the transatlantic slavery period. And so I started to think about the things I read and the things that I did and the things that I ate, reading a lot of Black Power literature. And I guess that strong sense of identity is what enabled me to overcome those obstacles and still stands me in good stead today. So my poetry speaks to being an outsider, although I'm on the inside, and so I write about all these kind of things and what people like me experience.
I prayed for hope, but it scurried down a pit. I dangled possibilities and yesterday's dreams to entice it, but it wouldn't come out. When I fell asleep at 3 a.m. and woke at 3:05, smelling pan-fried tomatoes and planting spears on one of those gurgle-along low days that gobbled me up where I sat, I couldn't imagine a life of pristine surprises.
One of the first poets that I saw that had me thinking, this seems like an interesting thing to do, was the poet Jean Binter-Breeze. If you looked at that scene, it was mainly dominated by men, so it was really good to see a woman doing that kind of thing. And I remember being up at some ridiculous time in the morning. It was something like maybe 2 or 3 a.m. With a newborn. So, you know, I had my baby and I was like watching TV just to kind of take the edge off it, you know, the edge off this child that was crying all the time. And there was Jean Binter-Breeze popping up on the screen doing some dub poetry. And I thought, wow, so somebody like that can do this and be on TV. That means I could do poetry like this too, and maybe one day be on TV, I don't know.
Take time to heal, time to love, time to express. It's not a sign of your weakness. Take a stop, slow down with your wheeling and dealing. Take hold of some spiritual healing and let the vibes flow. Let the vibes flow. Take time to heal, time to nourish, to feel good. Burn incense, affirmations, call on your ancestors for your salvation and let the vibes flow. Let the vibes flow.
With Nottingham Black Archive and its remit to document Black history, heritage and culture in Nottingham from the earliest time possible right up to the present day, I guess what it does for me, it puts me in this really unique position where I'm able to handle historical documents from community activists who worked hard to make the city a better place for people like me. So there were a number of different groups that started up in the 60s and the 70s. When you look what was behind all of these movements, it was about their children. So about people like me. What they wanted was for us to have an education, because what was happening at that time was the first group of Caribbeans that came were ex-servicemen. So these were people who had fought in World War II, who knew how to organize, who were disciplined, and they were the ones, people like George Powell and George Lee and Eric Irons, who spearheaded a lot of these campaigns and initiatives to make Nottingham more of an inclusive city. It had a far-reaching impact because one campaign that they did back in the late 50s was to campaign against Raleigh Industries. Raleigh Industries was one of the biggest industries in Nottingham, and they used to export their products around the world to Africa and to the Caribbean. Raleigh wasn't actually employing any Black people, so they were struggling to find work. Now, through the activism of people like George Powell, he was able to change that by talking to Norman Manley, the Jamaican premier at the time, and saying, look, this is the situation here in Nottingham. Jamaica then refused any more of Raleigh's bicycles in, and because of that, then Raleigh changed its decision and Black people were employed there. Almost every Black family in the city worked at Raleigh. And so when you look at that, you're talking about people's livelihoods. So that money that they work, then able to support themselves and their families, enabled people like me to be here, to go to school with shoes on my feet, something my mum never had. You know, when she was in Jamaica, one of her main dreams and ambitions when she came to this country in the 60s was that her children would have shoes. And they didn't want to see people like me ending up in factories. And they knew that one of the key things to change that was education. So they started up a number of different organizations and initiatives like supplementary schools to supplement our education. And I'm able, through the archive and through the testimonies of those people, be able to see actually the process they went through to make this city a better place for somebody like me. And it's really a privilege being able to listen to some of those stories, because some of those people aren't here now, but I was able to record their stories, to have their audio of them talking about the activism to make this city more inclusive.
I think with Panya's poetry in particular, It's both broad in that I sense that it speaks to a lot of people, but it's also totally rooted in Nottingham and in Nottingham Black Archive. So it's grounded in a cultural history. George Powell, who in a lot of ways was a mentor for Panya, also kind of passed the mantle to her for conserving as much of the history as possible of Nottingham's Jamaican and then more broadly Caribbean communities. I think when Panya's trying to piece together this history, the way that literary activism is important to that is that it's a kind of rescue mission. She's trying to collate and collect as many stories from as many different voices in the community as she can. I think as a poet, what's striking about Panya is that where for somebody else we might be thinking, well, this is a partial history, there are these gaps here, these lacunae in the record, and I don't know how to fill them. What Panya can do as a poet is she can bridge some of those gaps, because creatively through her poetry, she can imagine her way across them. She can start to think creatively about what might have been there. And I think she does that very sensitively. Poetry like Panya's, or literary activism, cultural activism, can bring about change. For example, when she led the We Will Remember Them project about the World War I veterans in Nottingham, that year, and I think as a result of the project, the first black poppy was laid on Remembrance Sunday. And that's a kind of grace note. It's an indication that people were listening finally to the fact that that poppy had been an absent presence, and the city really needed to see the history and to listen to it and to recognise it.
The cultural historian side of me, collecting Black history in Nottingham, is about leaving behind for my children and their children a legacy of what Black people have contributed to this city, Nottingham. In that sense, then everything that I do, I am passionate about, because I want to be this role model for them so that they can see whatever you do in life, you need to do it well, you need to love what you do, and you need to do it to the best of your ability. And that's what I try to do. We're a UNESCO City of Literature, and that means that there are lots of opportunities for writers. And I'm one of the patrons for the City of Literature as well, so I get to do things like mentor young writers coming up. So for me, that's absolutely fabulous, being able to share my experience with new writers and seeing them coming up and seeing them not being quite sure about where to go or how to write, and being able to support them on that journey, something that I didn't have. When I wrote political poetry back in the day, it wasn't well received. But it's about just being determined and saying, I'm going to do it because I've got something to say and you're going to hear it. If I think about how poetry has changed my life, it's given me a reason to continue existing, because I love it and I want to be able to do lots of things with it, to reach people with my words. It's allowed me to travel. This year I was commissioned to go to India, to Jaipur, and spend 10 days there at one of the biggest literature festivals in the world. And I met lots of fantastic people there, some brilliant speakers. I performed at the 2012 Olympic Games. I mean, that would never have happened if I hadn't been into poetry. And I was there on the day that Usain Bolt won the 100 meters. But that, again, is one of those experiences that you're never going to get again, or at least I don't think I will. Poetry has changed my life. It's really useful having an activist tool, and that's what I use it for. So when I perform, I'm asking the audience to stand in my shoes for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, so that they can experience some of what I experience as a Black woman living in this society. I have a chapter in a publication called Clever Girls, and that is about a group of women, and we talk about our journeys overcoming class, overcoming gender, overcoming race, to be successful, strong women. And what I find about that publication is that although we're from different parts of the country and we all have different experiences, what unites us is the fact that all the barriers that we've encountered, we've just broke them down, and we've continued to strive and will continue to do so to kind of leave our mark, I guess, leave our legacy, as a historian should do. The art of love. You had me. The moment you mixed the oils, then coaxed the canvas tight on your wooden frame, reloaded the brush to blend the rusty fragments of peeled paint, buttery strokes smoothing tilted lines. And when I dry, you paint me over again. When you collect and archive the remains, survey the smudges your fingers make on layers of headstrong fibres, weak-kneed under the weight. Preserving the moment, currents of colour declare their stay. Sit in frame, binding me.
Can you hear me? Can you see me? Behind this prism of glass, this square-shaped space. Is there somebody who can tell me if they can feel the breeze of my breath or the warmth of my skin? Can you smell the coconut conditioner in my hair? Or am I just a living ghost? A translucent entity, muted in this Zoom-like world. There is a voice that I hear. It's faint, but also near. The voice sounds familiar. I feel its distant presence, and it comes with warning. It tells me, I am you, and you are me. There is a haunting that has long been in our company. It hides behind safety, offering you a false sense of security. It begins with the words, catch up soon, must call, stay home, keep safe. These words enter your thoughts with empty reassurance that the numbing fog which is descending in your heart will surpass all vaccinations. You will hear only the ambience of silence. You will feel only the empty space that keeps us 2 meters apart. A hunger will grow for affection as the fog imprisons your senses, institutionalizing the imposter within your mind, frozen in time until the dark tunnel comes in. The voice faded away, leaving behind nothing but emptiness. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Hi, I'm Jo Weston and I'm going to read you 3 poems. The first one was commissioned by Left Lion and was out earlier this year. And the second and third were first published by Abachi and will be in my debut pamphlet, which will be published by Wild Press Books in May 2021. So the first poem, which was in Left Lion earlier this year, you might recognise the cover there. The poem is called Hoppos, and it's about Hopkinson's by the station in Nottingham. Hoppos. Established by the suited gent, framed up by the till, this building first through men in coats sold parts to engineers. Staff rushed between front desk and ladder to boxes high on shelves, and the name could guarantee that every part was here. Years later, after World War II, a new boss took the helm. Though needing work, his heart was lacking passion for the cause. While industry was gaining pace elsewhere in the city, the windows showed all 51, less footfall through the doors. Until one day his son decided to swap the hidden shelving for retail tools which everyone could try before you buy. And to the office where employees had handwritten ledgers, he bought computers, barcodes, tills, so all was unified. Business boomed until this man decided he would sell it. He leased the building to an ace in vintage and the arts. Small studios, a gallery were there at the beginning. The next idea involved instead old high streets at its heart. Now, walking in, you're greeted with the aroma of fresh coffee and that musk of memories there for you to find. Soulful tunes reset your thoughts as you move in closer, squeezing past the racks and piles to what you had in mind. Curious, you step onto another hidden staircase, past a barber's salon and guitars too nice to play. But when you spot an object which can make your heart beat faster and head back down the stairs to where you find the desk to pay, be sure to give a nod towards the framed gent right beside you, who helped create Old Hoppos as the place you find today. So my next poem is called Single Ticket, as I said, published by Abachi, and it'll be in my debut pamphlet, which is called How Not to Multitask. Single Ticket. As I leave the stop at the city's general to take my seat, I'm introduced through implements designed to hide to the half-eaten sounds of a song by Snap, vibrating from the head of a man by the staircase, while behind me a figure who used to swing with her mother cheek to cheek now moans to her forbearing friend of how late today's post arrives, and a group with a common interest in genetics debate across the back seat where science will be in 10 years' time, as a teenager engages his 2-year-old with a pointed finger and excited look, and I, still clutching my appointment letter, hear nothing but one line from the headphones of the man by the stairs in the song called Rhythm is a Dancer. And the last poem, which will also be in How Not to Multitask, is called Gran. When I was 2, my mother, in bed ill, thought the house had gone too quiet. She found me piling coal on a roaring fire and swept me away. You were meant to keep an eye on me. I didn't mind. When I was 12, I visited you in the flat on a hill with a piano at the top of the staircase and a sharp wind shooting under the doors. You only had lemon squash in, not the drinks children like. I didn't mind. When I was 20, I came to see you in my holidays. You'd forgotten that I was at uni, striding through yet another new flat with your perfect hair and stylish clothes. I didn't mind. When I was 31, I saw you in your last little room with plastic flowers. You smiled, first at my mum, then at me, and said, "Have you two met?" I had to leave the room. I hope you didn't mind.
Hello, my name is Thomas Daniel Ince and I will be reading 4 poems today, and I'm going to start with When the Artist is Lonely. When the artist is lonely, she sits and she thinks. When the artist is lonely, she sits and she writes. When the artist is lonely, she sits and she cries. When the artist is lonely, she sits and she paints. When the artist is lonely, she sits and she sings. When the artist is lonely, she sits and she drinks. When the artist is lonely, she sits and it begins. My second poem is called My Head and My Heart. I'm always between my head and my heart. You've caught me, again, between my head and my heart, oscillating back and forth, time and time again. I'm beginning to feel I might betray myself again. As my head and my heart are so far apart, I fear they shall not meet until I depart. My third poem is called Come Home. Home. Where is home? Is it the feeling you get when you're going home? Or is it the feeling you get when you're heading home after a long day at work? Are you looking forward to going home? Is there someone to go home to? Is that home? Somewhere for you to both go to? Or is it a home with those you call your loved ones, whether that's with family or with friends? Or is home being alone and being satisfied with simply that? Is home the tranquility of independence, or by chance friends who become loved ones, who we let into our homes and become our family? Whether they come from similar homes or not. Can we only be at home with those who are just as dysfunctional as ourselves? An angry dad, an unhappy mother, turns into an enraged boyfriend and a sorrowful friend who can't ever seem to find happiness. Or how about a runaway sister or brother who is never home and makes a home wherever they go, and without much thought of the consequences, and cares less about what you think of them, or so they'd like you to think. Maybe they like the feeling that you're home, waiting for them. Or perhaps they get a thrill every time they leave, knowing full well you will open your door every time they want to come home. To you, their home, or doormat. If so, change the lock and never look back, for they aren't welcome anymore. For you only want to create a happy home, one where you want to come home to, and cherish and love like the family you always deserved would come home. The last poem I'm going to read is called Everything is a Mirror. Everything is a mirror. Everything is a projection of your experienced reality. Perception is only a fragment of the whole potential, for we are unconscious to it all. We can acknowledge how we do this, however, and take time to reflect and notice our behaviour. We can get to know ourselves and how we respond to the world, learn from past mistakes, change your paradigm, live the best life you can live. What reflects onto you reflects onto me. For we are mirrors. We are mirrors to all who walk the earth, reflecting one another, unveiling new versions of ourselves, learning who we are through one another, as well as seeing something of ourselves in each other.
Google Hoop was a time when the days Google hooped along and we laughed and lived with babies and chickens and the goats out on the pastures making Google Hoop dances, and the milk cows sang Google Hoopin' songs while kicking the milker who shouted, "Google Hoop you!" Those simple days when Google Hoop was our only worry, when Google Hoop was our hope. Before we ate the Google Hoop right up. Before we were blamed for Google Hoopin' too much. Before the hoopin' sun went down and we were cast out to search anew for angels. Tres Marias waits for me. I come with these hands that light the night, in a canoe through the sweating jungle, on horseback through the weary hills, on foot on the sly steep trail up the mountain to bring my magic de la luz. Me, Norma Guerra Sanchez, born on the coast of Oaxaca, who once knew only of salt water and fish. And yes, I can count as many fish as los abuelos y abuelas can catch. I have counted tens, hundreds, thousands in my life. Each day brings a fish, we say. I am 52, have seen many days, and never thought I'd be chosen to learn. They came to our village and picked me. Why? Was it the curve of my face? The length of my hand? I went to the Barefoot University with many others to learn the secrets, the parts of the pieces that will connect us to the sun itself. Then I took the parts and the secrets home, and without hurry and with persistence, I built the things that capture the sun in their wings and hold it in their bodies and shiver and hum. And yes, help us call the doctor when we are ill. Help us plug in a phone to charge it to call the doctor. Help the children study at night to learn to be the doctor. If they don't want to learn to count fish, to count the days, as I did. But I wonder, my grandchildren now say, "Turn on the light, abuela, tengo miedo de la oscuridad." But I know they were not afraid before. Will we soon be frightened of our own shadows? Have we lost the wisdom to bailar a la luz de la luna? Now I am here, stepping on the stony path into the village. Buenos dias, Tres Marias, Paso del Tigre. It is I, bringer of nightlight, that will change the Tigre completely. And I tell you, be careful. The Spanish are coming again. They want your land this time so they can steal the light of your sun and turn it into gold. I am on this earth, and it is bucking and snorting, and the histories fly like angry hornets, searching for a bare stretch of skin to sting. And the certitudes and platitudes go on dropping bombs, go on shooting guns. And the cries of the hurt circle, and the anger cannot be silenced. I am on this earth, and lightning flashes across my eyelids, jagged forests of fear. And the certitudes and platitudes walk the street in plain daylight, smug. I am on this earth, and it is rearing and balking. The truths peck fierce, cut tendons, tear flesh. I am on this earth, and it is sweating and spinning, and the future hurls me towards the cliff's edge, where I will jump to follow the woolly mammoth. Hello there. Je suis Frau Spaghetti. You see, I'm not from here. You see, I get confused. The words come out all skewed. Torn between 5 countries, I don't know what to do. And to put it bluntly, I'm feeling rather blue. I'm torn between 5 countries. The words keep sounding new. Please, 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 someone give me just a clue. Hello there, I'm new. Je suis Frau Spaghetti. Can't understand a word. Can you read this letter from the school? My kids speak German. From the school, my kids speak Italian. From the school, my kids speak French. Can you help me find a bank? A place to buy shampoo. A place to sit and think. There's so much I gotta do, and I just don't got a clue. Don't have no clothes. The van got lost. Don't have no bed. The van's in France. If you only knew, I'm hard of hearing too. I'm in a big, big stew. Got to help my kids. Got to see them through. Je suis Frau Spaghetti. You see I'm not from here. You see I get confused. The words come out all skewed. Have you ever had that view? Have you ever felt lost, 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 and not known what to do?
Massive thank you to all of the poets who performed for us today. We're absolutely buzzing to say that we've hosted you, and we just can't wait to show the rest of you what we've got in store for the rest of the programme. Make sure you register for tickets for our headline events. The next one we've got is Vanessa Casule, and she's performing on Monday at 7 o'clock. So just go over to the Nottingham Poetry Festival website, and there you will be able to find where to book. See you later.